All right. Welcome to this week's live office hours. Casey, you're back after abandoning me last week.
Just got to
I gotta
work on
give you
your
some love
improv
on it.
skills there. No,
Yeah.
it's good to be back, and yeah, excited to jump into some stuff with some folks today.
Yeah, we're pumped. A lot of things we obviously can dive into as everybody's jumping in here. Again, just for context, this is open office hours, meaning there's no agenda. It's just questions you have. We ask that you jump in here, ask questions, give us feedback. We can talk about repricing, Aura as a product. We can talk about just things as a seller. Um, and yeah, it's just kind of open-ended in that way. If nothing comes through, then Casey and I will just kind of jam on some stuff to kind of get the ball rolling. But yeah, as everybody's jumping in here, go ahead and throw us some comments. Casey, is there anything top of mind on your end?
I mean, a lot of people that I've been chatting with are really gearing up for Q4, whether it's, taking a second to kind of reevaluate their inventory, see where they may stand going into Q3, Q4 here, maybe doing some strategy switches, kind of a good time to test some things when sales might be a little bit slower. So seeing people kind of bounce a couple things, maybe onto Maven, maybe off of Maven, kind of try to compare and contrast what listings might be better for rules-based versus Mavens. So definitely kind of been a big assessment period kind of in prep leading up to Q4. And then obviously we know Q1 is kind of a review period for that same time, but really focused on those crucial couple months in November and December that are coming up.
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, now's a great time to start going through your inventory and moving things that are stale. You should be doing this routinely, but listen, you get busy and sometimes things just kind of stack up, but now's a really good time to take a few days and say, let me go SKU by SKU here and see what I really just need to liquidate. Cause you need to start freeing up as much capital as you can, whether you're doing RA, OA, or wholesale, doesn't matter, to be able to deploy that at the best possible way for Q4. Like you really need to start ramping up those inventory levels. And I talked with one of our partners. We're doing live. I do a lot of these, so the name escapes me who I did it with. But we were basically talking about going into like Black Friday kind of things, Q4 and whatnot. And one thing came up, which was like, hey, once I've really got repricing dialed in, what else should I be doing? Like once you've got that foundation, you're crushing it, what then? And I think it's a great question that a lot of people don't ask. And my go-to recommendation there is you should have more inventory, right? If you want more sales, you need to have more inventory. And what's interesting, we tested this way back before regional buy boxes were actually visibly a thing. They were kind of happening in stealth mode, but you couldn't really tell. So during the Amazon kind of experimentation phase, I was actually a seller at the time. And I was working with some other, peer sellers that were doing wholesale. And one of them was just like, you know what? I'm just going to start sending in 10% more inventory until sales just cap, like actually cap, not just like, oh, I got, whatever. And she did that and found she could move a lot more inventory. And this is like non Q4, right? This is just regular Q1, Q2 kind of vibes. And now you have actual regional buy boxes. So it totally makes sense, right? And so what I tend to recommend people to do is once you really get the systems in place, Maven, rule-based, it doesn't matter, get that locked in. And now it's about feeding the beast, right? And I think a lot of people think feeding the beast is just more SKUs. And sometimes, you got to go super wide. But when you find things that do well, you need to start really focusing in on maximizing the opportunity of that. I think a lot of sellers are just looking for that next SKU, and not realizing, dude, you got 25 SKUs that you could sell 30% more of if you just sent in more of that inventory. Now, it does depend on how much availability you have for the supply side, right? If you're doing RA and it's limited, I get it, but at least make sure you're maximizing how much you can do, right? You tap out. You want to make sure, basically what I'm trying to say here is that you're getting the most out of the demand that already exists. That's all you do as a seller, right? You're just plugging the supply side of the already existing demand. That's all you're doing. Even if you're running PPC, you're just shifting demand a little bit towards your SKU, but the demand's already there. So start doing that now, right? So every dollar that is stale that's sitting there is an opportunity that you're saying, I'm going to keep my dollars there and not spend it over here. And you should have a really good reason for doing that intentionally. Because if you could sell it at break even and spend it over here in 24 hours for a even 10% ROI, that's a better decision financially. And so you need to constantly be looking at these things. And I think this is why Amazon's really pushing on inventory incentives, right? I think actually in that same conversation, I now recall, is with Nathan Jackson. We were talking about incentive, right? How the models are built, and you have to think of Amazon as a model, because that's what it is. You have certain incentives and disincentives, and Amazon's going to figure out how to design their incentive model to make you do the behaviors that they need of you. Now, what's interesting, that sounds horrible, but actually they have so much data that they're going to make that in a way that makes sense in aggregate. Sometimes that does make sense for the individual. Sometimes it does not. Sometimes it's painful for sellers, but it actually does make a lot of sense. And it's stuff you should have been doing anyway. So there's no negative consequences of doing it, but you should have been moving inventory faster. That's why you have things like long-term storage fees. They're like, hey, we don't want things to sit here forever. This is not long-term warehouse. This is a fulfillment center. Like, they need to come in and go out. So yeah, I think, going into Prime Day even, right? Like, that's coming up, next week? You should be doing that now, right? You should be packing things in there, taking the most out of it. That's why we wrote a blog post about this 2 weeks ago. Just basically, like, how do you approach that? Like, you need to be sitting down and creating your strategy for these things way earlier than just like, oh, Q4 is here, I should think about it. No. You plan for Q4 and Q2 and Q3. If you're doing a lot of wholesale, Q2 into Q2 starts to make a little bit more sense, because you can place back ordered POs, and you can backdate them, basically. Just be like, cool, I'm going to spread it out, but I only want them to ship in increments of 150, whatever. You can kind of space it out pretty well. So that's something to think about. Yeah. That's the stuff that when I was a seller did not pay enough attention to at all. I was just flying by the seat of my pants. Now, having ran multiple businesses, I think a little bit more strategically. Like, we should plan for this, and how we're going to do this, and looking at data and things like that. Back then, I was like, just get inventory in, new SKUs, right? But I think that's kind of that hustle mentality versus the strategic kind of, we're building a company here.
Definitely, yeah. And I do think it's a balance of, continuing to explore on different SKUs and then finding ones that are worth reinvesting in moving forward, and having, I don't know what a good split would be, but I would say, like, if you have 70% of your inventory that's proven, and then you're testing with the last 30-40%, that seems to be a good ratio. Obviously, more than half you have confidence in, and then the other half you can kind of play with from there. But don't take those percentages to heart. I have not done that. This is spitballing here, folks. But
no, but I think it's a good point, right? I remember when I was doing wholesale, I had limited capital, so I had to make really smart decisions. I would intentionally not buy something that was profitable, because I could spend that same $1,000 on something that was slightly more profitable, and that's all the capital I had. And even using credit cards and stuff like that. But I remember thinking about, I read the book 80/20 analysis, and I was like, let me run that on my inventory here. And I looked at my brands, and I was like, okay, cool. There's like 2 brands that account for 80% of my inventory, my sales and revenue. If I lose one of those, I lose basically 40% of my revenue overnight. So, like, let me send them a nice basket. Let me, call them up. Hey guys, how's everything going? Do you need anything? Like, but also looking at the other 20% and be like, well, why is it only 20? Could it actually be closer to 30%? Am I not getting enough here? Maybe I'm actually over indexing on, I'm sorry, I said that the inverse. On the 80% that's generating only 20%, you know what I mean? But am I over indexing on just those 2 suppliers and not paying enough attention to the others to bring them up in value? So you can kind of go either which way and kind of mess that up. So you really need to think about, what's my risk right now? If you have great relationships with the 2 suppliers that make up 80% of your inventory, awesome. Go get more of those types of suppliers and just keep those relationships in a maintenance mode kind of thing. But if you don't have a good relationship, maybe you should spend more time there. Right. So it's all contextual, of course.
Definitely.
See, Anthony has a question here. If I have a listing that moves faster at a lower price, but Maven is repricing higher, what are the best practices when switching lower targeted price strategy? Okay, so I'm going to take this a few different ways. First, just because you can move faster at a lower rate isn't always a good thing. It can be, right? So it depends on how much inventory, how many units of that SKU you have. So if you don't have a ton of those units, I would say actually let it do its thing and try to maximize the margin there. If you're doing something like wholesale, going super deep in that SKU, the lower price, higher volume could actually make a ton of sense. So from that perspective, if that is the case, like the wholesale route, like I just mentioned, you might want to consider doing like a buy box targeting strategy. So you don't have to be as aggressive. You don't have to reprice below by a penny. You just match it and probably be okay. What I tend to recommend though, without looking at the actual listing and stuff like that, run an experiment, like switch over to like a buy box targeting rule-based strategy, see how that plays. If it increases performance in a way that makes sense for you, you should probably be doing that. If it doesn't, I would revert back to Maven. But Casey, anything you want to add on to that?
No, that definitely is in line with my typical recommendations in terms of just strategy usage. Anthony, if your main focus is that sales velocity, then I do typically recommend the rules-based buy box targeting strategy. Like Dylan mentioned, if you have confidence that you're going to win the buy box and you want to avoid price tanking, you can always elect to just match the price of the buy box winner. And then on the flip side, if you are more focused on margin as opposed to sales velocity, that's going to be where Maven comes in. So yeah, I'm sure you are correct that it will move faster at that lower price, but might want to just do a little bit more data analysis in terms of if it's moving faster, does that actually generate more revenue, higher margins, and things like that for you?
Yeah.
So yeah, I would agree with Dylan. You can always flip it to a rules-based strategy, see how it performs, flip it back to that same Maven strategy just to see, or kind of compare and contrast those results rather.
Yeah. And this is where this type of advice gets really difficult for me because every seller is so different. My exact advice would change if I knew what kind of capital constraints did you have. Because if you're really capital constrained, I would say you should move things a little bit faster just to keep the dollars liquid, so that you can reinvest faster. If you're capital flush, I would say probably leave that for a higher margin and let Maven do its thing. It's where it gets really tough with these conversations because I want to give like an exact, here's exactly what to do. Sometimes I can't do that. So I tend to just be like, here's a menu of options to consider and how to think about it, without you trying to put your stuff out in public. So yeah, it's funny. I used to be very opinionated about this exact thing. But once we came out with Maven and we took a different approach with it, we saw the data, obviously my opinions changed, as they should, right? When you have data that kind of shifts something, it kind of proves you a little bit wrong, you need to change your opinions. I used to be very much like move inventory as fast as you can. And again, there are cases where that's very much still true in my recommendation. But this is what I love about how we built Maven, right? Because we're finding this balance between sales velocity and profitability. And these are the only two levers that we have. And what I used to say is, well, really, you should be willing to take a little bit less profitability, but have a little bit more volume to stay liquid and stuff like that. But what's interesting is when you get really in the weeds on that concept and the data of it, you can actually move things a little less, raise your margin, and not take that big of a hit on velocity. And that's the hard part here. Like you can't always do that, but most of the time you can, which is why we designed Maven the way that we did. Because that's really what that optimal price is trying to do. It's saying, how can we move the massive or the maximum amount of volume at the best possible profitability? We're trying to find that balance and not give one or the other priority. Although sometimes you do need to do that. Like if you're doing a liquidation strategy, you care far less about profitability, far more about velocity. So that's where it gets kind of tough, because there are, again, situations where you do need to over index on one of those two, but as a rule, basically, I would say you want to find that balance, because it tends to work pretty well. And that's the thing that's interesting. I think my approach, because it's such a capital intensive business, was like, I need to spend it and get it back as fast as possible. Now I'm a little bit more conservative. I'm like, actually, you can slow that down a little bit and it's fine. Like it's going to be fun. Let's see, Anthony. Didn't really hear what you guys said because you guys were glitching. So sorry. But at a lower price, I'm still very profitable. I would get sales at least 1 to 3 times a day. Now, with Maven, I've only had one sale in 3 weeks. I did make $10 more, but the sell through on the listing is more profitable for me. Yeah. So love the way you're thinking about this, right? And this is why we haven't gone pure AI. I don't think that rationally makes sense. So in that case, I would actually go to a buy box targeting strategy, because if you're still super profitable at that lower value, you're going to be totally fine. Not a problem at all. I would venture to guess too, based on the difference between the sales there, that the BSR is probably a little bit higher. So what might be happening is, as we're raising that up, the BSR is increasing. There's probably not a ton of competition on the listing either, just from what I have seen as a pattern. So it may make sense to actually lower that down, like you're talking about here, lower the BSR to a sweet spot and be okay there. One thing you can do though, is you could still use Maven, but assign a lower max value. Maven's still going to work really well, but in this exact scenario, it's trying to maximize the margin for you, but it's in a weird kind of situation, if you will. So what you could do is basically just reduce that max value, and most likely you're going to be completely fine. Sorry if you can hear these. I live near a few bases, military bases, and they're running drills apparently right now, which is so loud. That's insane. I'm not sure if you guys can hear that.
Yeah, I think I get what Anthony was saying with the glitch there, but you're coming through clear now, so we should be all right.
Definitely just had a fighter jet fly over my house, so that was cool, and like really low too. Like that's fun. But yeah, that's kind of what I would say. So yeah, Anthony, I think you're right on the money there.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah, in case we glitched again, Anthony, sounds like buy box targeting strategy is best for you there.
I was gonna give you the old thumbs up. We got a lot of people in here, which is awesome. Please throw in your questions, your comments, your feedback, all the things. If you have feedback in terms of like functionality you want to see, let us know these things. If there's things you love, let us know those too. It lets us know what we did well. It's always important too.
Yeah, and if you folks are new and you're not aware, we do have like a hub for feature requests and tracking feature requests. Dylan, if you want to put the URL in the bottom there, yeah, that's a great way just to see what we're working on, what we're planning on working on. We try to prioritize the things that are going to impact the most users in the best way possible. So if you have something on mind, feel free to search it there. And if it's not there, create a new post. If it is already there, feel free to upvote it. That'll let us know that more people want that feature or function, and we'll kind of prioritize it on the timeline there.
And I know I have been teasing this, but we have a major project that we're coming out of the prototyping phase on, and we're actually going to start building it hopefully next week, actually. Stealth mode, can't talk about it, but I'm very pumped. It's going to be a massive change. So very excited about this. The team's finally like all on board with everything. And like, we kind of have a really good grasp as to what this is going to be. And now it's just building it and executing it. And, you know, probably within a month or so, we'll start getting early beta users in there to actually start testing that product. And then eventually go public with it, which is going to be absolutely bonkers. Brand new for us, which is going to be really fun. But a lot of major changes coming to everyone here. So I'm very pumped. Awesome. So I feel like we got a lot of lurkers today. Don't be shy. Send us questions. Even if you feel like it's a newbie question, I want you to ask it, because that's exactly what this session is for. If you're like, I'm overwhelmed and I'm not sure how to get started, let us know that. If you're curious about and want to go super in deep on a particular topic or subject, we can do that too. You guys know I like to geek out pretty heavily, so happy to do that as well.
Mm-hmm. And it doesn't have to be Aura specific. It can just be Amazon selling at a high level or as a whole, best business practices, certain things like that. I'm sure if someone asks any questions about tools we use, Dylan would be more than happy to go into his board of AI solutions that he has. I'm sure hotkeyed and shortcutted on his browser, but
always.
But yeah, feel free to jump in with any questions.
I recently, I used to do this for the longest time as a task manager, and for some reason just like got disillusioned with it and started using Reflect for my notes. Used to use Evernote, and Reflect has like a task section. So I've been like trying to use that, and it's just been kicking my butt. So I've been testing Things 3, and it is phenomenal.
Nice.
So highly recommend that. It's ridiculously pricey for some reason. Like Todoist, you just pay for like the one subscription and it works on all devices. For Things 3, it's like the app version, and then like the phone version is different. I'm on the trial, but so far I really, really enjoy it. Very minimal. Love good design, as you guys know.
Nice.
Yeah, pretty pumped.
Yeah, I haven't been using any new tools recently. I'm still a little old school with analog. I've got like an agenda with like daily tasks I write out. I haven't quite put that into the digital ether just yet, but yeah.
It's funny, whenever I'm like brainstorming, I need to handwrite. So actually I have like a physical notebook here. I can't really brainstorm well via typing. I don't know what it is. It doesn't hit the same. And there's something about like handwriting notes that does work different with the brain.
Yeah.
But a huge fan of doing that, basically journaling, stuff like that. It's kind of fun.
Yeah.
I recently too finally got back into reading a little bit more.
Nice.
Realized I pre-ordered a book, forgot that I pre-ordered it, and then ordered it again, and 2 showed up yesterday. That was fun.
Nice.
But it's a cool book. It's by a guy I follow, Andrew Wilkinson. I follow him on Twitter, and he just came out with a book and apparently just became a billionaire, which is kind of exciting. Been following him for a little while. His old company, Tiny, I know it's called something else, and then Tiny. They're basically doing like a mini Berkshire Hathaway.
Got it.
In tech, which is like super cool. So I read like half that book last night, and it's just phenomenal. Just like how it kind of resonates a lot with me as a founder, because I'm like, yeah, I've gone through the exact same things this guy's going through. That's pretty cool. Not to say I'll ever become a billionaire, but it's pretty fun. It's definitely a different way to peer into it, especially like it's really fresh that it recently happened. So he's able to go back into like the story really well. So what's it called? From barista, can't never say this word. From barista to billionaire is the name of the book. Really great read, really fast read too.
Nice.
Let's see, Anthony's got another question here. I set a listing on liquidation strategy at break even, but today I noticed I made some profit on the listing. I looked at the listing and noticed offers dropping, albeit there's still 81 offers. How would you guys change the strategy now that I'm capturing some profit? So what's good is, and this is what I've been saying for years, just because you set it on a liquidation doesn't mean that you're going to zero, right? Like we're just trying to capture as much as we can. If you're stabilizing profitability, you're probably going to be okay. I would consider going over to Maven again with the lower max value, and probably better option here is I would use that same buy box targeting strategy that we talked about with you prior. That's probably going to be your best bet. So I'd test that, see how that performs. But it sounds like liquidation is actually working well for you, which is pretty good. So kind of similar recommendations. That's what's cool here. It's like we try to take a very simplistic approach versus like, all right, here's like the 15 things that have to be perfect. It's like, not really. We want to hit like that 80-20 again, right? How do we cover 80% of the cases? Relatively straightforward. It just makes it so much easier for you. But Casey, anything you want to add on to that one?
No, I think I would just kind of reiterate and emphasize your note that just because you set your minimum low doesn't mean it's going to shoot right down to that min. Yeah. Obviously, there are scenarios and rules-based strategies where if the competition's below your min price, then you'll likely be at that min price. But in this scenario, Anthony, I would agree you can flip it over to a buy box targeting strategy or Maven. But as long as you have in your mind, acceptable range set up on that strategy, you could even leave it on the liquidation strategy in case the competitive landscape changes quickly. And then maybe that break-even point will become the best price point in a few days, who knows? But yeah, I think if you are capturing some profitability, again, feel free to kind of split test performance on a couple different strategies, and you can always revert back to the liquidation if needed.
Exactly. I am curious though, like in the comments, let us know how you're approaching Prime Day. Like what's your strategy? Like how are you setting yourself up for success to get the most out of this? Because I'm curious, because there's so many different ways you can approach it. I always like seeing how other sellers are intentionally approaching this, because I feel like it always gets the gears churning for me as well. So throw that into the comments as well. We'd love to see that and share that with everyone, of course.
Yeah, definitely.
If not, I'm just going to start geeking out with AI, which I was waiting for Casey to smile. Here we go. I actually don't have a ton to share. I've kind of just had to go laser focus for a bit. So I'm not super up to date with everything. Although not much has changed dramatically as of late. I was very off topic, but I use this tool called Autopilot. It's a mobile app that sits on top of Robinhood, and you basically pick your politician, and it basically replicates their trades.
Yeah, I've seen that.
And then today there was a Senate bill that is getting put forth to basically ban that entirely. So it's like, well, that's a short-term business model.
Yeah.
So
yeah, John Oliver did a big segment on that app a few months ago now, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah, I'm up like 15%. That's pretty exciting. Like 4 weeks. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
But now they're like going to remove it. So that's kind of sad. I was like, oh, cool. Life hack, right? Like I'll just throw everything in there, let it ride, and we're good. But this just goes to prove there's, in finance, we have the saying, like, there's never like a free lunch.
Yeah.
There's always something. Always, man. Does not matter what. So kind of funny. So less on the AI front, but more on, like, I guess you can call that automation in a way.
Yeah.
But yeah, I will say that some of the first Android robotics is what I'm going to call them, humanoid robotics, whatever you want to call them, are actually shipping to real companies. So Figure, I think, just shipped, I want to say, like, more than 20 robots to, I think it was BMW, their manufacturing plant. And they're running tests right now in real environments. The pace of that world is absolutely astronomical right now. And I think a lot of your prep centers are going to have to evolve. I think it's only going to take one to come out that is 24/7, lights off, super efficient, can charge super low rates. We just need to get the speed up, because right now they operate relatively slow, still consistent, but slower than a human would, but also less defects and things like that. China just came out with forget what company it was, but basically the entire manufacturing facility, end to end, no humans. Like, there's this whole theoretical, like, idealized version of a warehouse that is, like, it's called a blackout, or, lights out warehouse. Basically, there's no humans, so you don't need lights, right? Like, you've got robots doing everything. And that just went live.
That's crazy.
And this is nuts. I mean, a lot's going to change. I know Amazon's starting to push way more for that type of robotics in their, I mean, they purchased Kiva Systems years ago, which is like the little orange kind of Roomba looking things that pick up the stacks of inventory. And basically, instead of the human going to get it, it brings it to the human. That's been there for 5+ years. But I think we're going to see a lot more layoffs on the Amazon fulfillment side, and a lot more robotics coming in. So lots going to change, hopefully, although, it's not a great thing for the people working there getting laid off, but hopefully for sellers, this will lower the fees, or just make Amazon more money and they don't change the fees. Who knows? We'll see. I'm hopeful that it will either lower the fees or stave off the forever increasing fees that we see every single year. We'll see.
Yep.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
Have you played around with Amazon's like little shopper assistant on the app yet?
I haven't played. I've been trying to do a good job of not spending extra money, so I have not been doing any recreational shopping as of late. With that being said, my girlfriend's birthday is coming up, so I do need to start doing some shopping there. But yeah, I did see it in the app, but I haven't actually used it. How does it kind of like guide you through like looking at things and stuff?
It's almost like a chat app the way I've used it. Apparently, and I haven't tested it recently, but apparently it's going to be like a version of search as well. Like, hey, find me a product that does X, Y, or Z. But if I'm on a product listing, I can actually ask questions about that particular product. And if in the content that question is answered, I just get a direct answer.
Nice.
It doesn't sound like that big of a deal, but it's actually huge, because it means that the data, the content, should I say, that is included in your listings should now be written for Q&A style things. You should be thinking about what, and I'm hoping what will happen is Amazon will allow sellers to see the questions that are being asked on their products that do not have an answer. So they will tell you, hey, here's 90% of people ask this question and there's no answer. Go and answer it. Because those types of things can increase the conversion rate pretty well. And if I can't get an answer, if I'm like, hey, does this work with my MacBook Air? And it's like, we don't know, well, I'm probably not going to use that. Then I'm going to go to one that I know for a fact that it is going to. I might even ask it, like, great, find me an alternative that does. And so that product just lost my sale. So you're starting to see conversations about how does this affect things like SEO? Because a lot of times we write articles for SEO and we rank. But now people aren't really certain. Well, people still are, but this will change over time. We're already seeing this with tools like Perplexity, where I'm really not writing the content for the human entirely. I'm really just trying to give a massive overview that a large language model could really understand, get a ton of value from, and then just give the direct answer to the end user and then use me as a resource. I think we're going to see that in a lot of other areas as well, because Amazon's very data content heavy. So how does this change PPC advertising? How does this change how you write and optimize listings? because we have listing SEO, right? That's a whole concept here. But how does that fundamentally change? If it changes, maybe it doesn't. I don't know. But like these are all the questions that are kind of up in the air right now, where a lot of experimentation is happening with these types of systems, and nobody really knows the answer until we get the data, until we just run the experiment, see what happens, make changes. It's just going to me, that's exciting. I think it could usher in a new world for sellers where, and I've talked about this before, but imagine being able to have like a co-pilot as a seller, right? A lot of times we lean on mentors, we lean on courses, we lean on content, what have you. But what if instead we could train a large language model mentor, and it has deep understanding of all these things, has access to all of our data. So when I said earlier, hey, sometimes it's hard to give direct advice or recommendation because I need more data, more context. It's the same problem. But what if I was the AI in this situation and I had access to all your seller data?
Mm-hmm.
I'd be like, oh, here's exactly what you should do. Like it's personalized recommendations now. So that's very exciting. I think we're going to see a lot more of these industry specific co-pilots that are going to come in. Right now they're very specific. One's for email, one's for Slack. And I don't think we're going to have this overarching one, but eventually you'll start to see a lot of that kind of stuff.
Yeah. And I think that Shopper Assistant, like you said, it'd be really impactful if it is in some shape or form able to provide insight into, hey, this might be information that may be missing from your listing that people are asking about. From my experience in sales, if a potential customer is a good fit, but they don't buy, it's most commonly due to a lack of information or a lack of understanding. So being able to kind of fill those gaps on your products in those product descriptions is going to be super, super helpful, and just paint a clearer picture for those folks who are a good fit for what you're trying to sell. And as we've seen, people have started to use, ChatGPT, different things to actually semi-automate the actual writing of those product descriptions or details and things like that. So kind of being able to take those two things hand in hand and optimize that listing description page is definitely going to make a big move the needle a lot for a lot of folks.
Yeah. And for me, my mind goes to, cool, that's like V1, V2 of this is it understands, here's the gaps in the content, use some other tool like Perplexity to go find the answer off platform and then bring it into platform. And so I've had this, idea for a while, which is like, why isn't it that like every time I jump on a listing, it doesn't just automatically understand perfect SEO, like best practices, all these things, grab all the data it needs to get it right, and then just self-optimize for the right, like understand what are the right keywords that should happen here, write the content for me, understand all the details that need to be packed in, like make this better, but make it better passively, like make it better without me really in the loop. And maybe it automatically creates the draft, and then I go through, I'm like, yeah, this actually looks good, or actually there's a few things that are kind of off here. Let me make a few minor changes, but it's doing 99% of the heavy lifting. And I just go, yeah, approve, ship it off, hopefully Amazon, accepts it, and we're good to go here. I mean, that's just huge, right? I mean, this could magnify sales dramatically. I mean, even if it just increased sales by 10%, the workload and the cost would be so low, it would just be worth it.
Definitely.
So yeah, Anthony, what do you guys like better? ChatGPT, Perplexity, Grok, Maven? Maven, obviously. We built Maven, so obviously it's way cooler. I've not used Grok personally. I've seen some example or some reviews of people using it. I wasn't very impressed, to be frank. I don't think it's that great of a model. ChatGPT was really good, and I hyped it for the longest time, but they're starting to get surpassed very fast by Claude. So Claude 3.5 Sonnet is the specific model by Anthropic. I've been using that a ton, and it is amazing, amazing, amazing. They keep hitting new benchmarks. Another one just came out today where basically it outranked everybody with math, which if you understand large language models, they really, really struggle with math and some logic. And so it's absolutely incredible of a model. I think ChatGPT is cool, but ChatGPT limits you quite a bit in terms of what you can and can't do. So when you start messing around with like coding your own versions using these models, you realize just how much more there is, like injecting variables and things like that. I mean, prompts can be 5,000 words, in reality. And so ChatGPT, which is like the interface, the chat interface, can really struggle with that much context, right? Whereas like I can jump into Claude on the back end. So it's like console.anthropic.com or console.claude.com. And I can actually control a lot more. So I could say, here's how big the context window I want it to be. I want it to be 4,000 tokens. So basically it can just take in more information. And I can also control the temperature. So basically temperature is, call it creativity. So if it's at 0, it's not going to have much deviation. If it's at 1, it's going to have the most amount of deviation. If I'm doing writing things, I'm going to put that at 1. So it has a lot more creativity. And then I'm also going to boost up the context window as large as I can because I'm giving it a ton of data. Right. I might give it like my draft and say, hey, like act like an editor. Tell me how to make this better. And it's going to take in, read the whole thing, be like, boom, 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 boom. Here we go. So that's kind of nice. Like just jumping in and asking questions is not remotely good enough in any system. We're just not there yet. You have to give it a context. You have to, they call it surfing the latent space. If you think about a model, it's like this huge brain, if you will, and there's all this space, and you can preemptively say, hey, look over here. I could say, pretend you're a X, pretend you're a content writer with 10 years of agency experience. Now it goes, oh, cool. That's actually over here. I'm going to spend a little bit more time pulling information from this section of the model instead of over here. And so I did this with the team when I was we do lunch and learns every Thursday. And I was talking about prompt engineering and building agents. And I showed, okay, here's me asking it to do something straight, forward, not great. And then I wrote a different version of that same prompt that was way more detailed, and the output was 10 times better and way more consistent. That's true for every model, to be honest. But yeah, Grok, I don't know. People think it's cool. I think it's more novelty than, practical. I care about practicality, right? Like if it's like, oh, it's kind of funny. I'm like, that's cool. But like, how does that help me in my day-to-day life? Like I want it to do work for me, not make me laugh. I really could care less about laughing. Like I can go watch TV and do that. But I would say Maven, obviously. Maven's dope.
Yeah. I've started to kind of use Perplexity as my main, kind of like you, Dylan, just using it as like my main search engine. So kind of like quick hitting questions where it's able to quickly surf the web and serve up that kind of quick synopsis of whatever your main question is. I think I've mentioned it on previous office hours a little bit over a year ago now. Me and a buddy were going to visit a friend in San Diego, and we actually used ChatGPT to plan our vacation. We're like, hey, we're in San Diego for 4 days. We want to go to a baseball game. Like, plan out, or we want to go to a baseball game and jet ski. Other than that, like plan out the rest of the weekend with like the most popular tourist visits. And it spit us out a 3 meal a day schedule, like all broken down. It's like jet skiing is pretty labor or physically intensive. So you're going to want to eat it, big breakfast this morning. We recommend eating it here. So it did a really good job with plenty of context, but kind of like you said, it does need kind of more detailed descriptions of what you're actually looking for. I had it build me like a workout / diet plan a few weeks ago. Haven't started it yet, but it did build a decent kind of game plan for me there. But yeah, that for lack of more experience with other tools there, Anthony, Perplexity is kind of my go-to, just general quick hitting search engine. ChatGPT, if I have more time to kind of paint some color on the question, I'll use that there.
Yeah, I like Perplexity for learning something where I'm just like, what is this? Or how does that work? I'll jump into Perplexity and be like, just explain this topic. Or how do I do X? I was really curious about like the different levels of licensing for skydiving. And I was like, hey, break down the levels. How long does it take? What's the prioritization? What does it typically cost? And then like go all the way up to this level, which was like, for me, like a halo jump, a high altitude, low open, which is like typically reserved for military, but you can do it as a civilian. And I wanted to understand what was the path to get there. And so I jumped into Perplexity. I jumped into their pages feature specifically and asked that question, and it broke it down for me. There's a few sections where I was like, it's not super clear. So I jumped in and was like, hey, make this section clearer. And it went even more detail. So just for going like 0 to 1 on a topic really fast, Perplexity is amazing. It's absolutely fast. It's amazing. But if I'm like trying to get like work, like I'm trying to be like, hey, write this subject line for me, I'm probably going to go over to a Claude for the most part, because it does pretty well. And I'll create these, you can call them agents, but basically it's like pre-created prompts that I had created that I can reuse. So I'll create like a email subject writer agent, and I can just throw in the blog post, be like, hey, like give me like 5 examples here. Most of the time I'm not using them, but it's getting my gears turning like, oh, I like this aspect of number 2, but I could probably change it this way based on my knowledge. So AI, in my opinion, right now is really good for helping you avoid what I call the blank page problem. So like, even if I'm like, I want to write about this topic, but I'm not sure where to start, I'll jump in and be like, here's what I want to write about. Just give me an example outline. Cause then I'll be like, oh, I didn't even think about that. I'll make sure to include this, or actually that doesn't make sense. I'm going to remove that. So I can move a lot faster. And that's just been phenomenal. That's been absolutely amazing. So it's like Maven, Perplexity, Claude, 3.5 Sonnet. It's like my hierarchy. So Claude. So actually, I'm gonna throw it in the comment section here. Claude. It's by Anthropic, is the company who makes the all the models. Yeah, it's pretty amazing. Highly recommended. Even actually on vacation, I was chatting with Claude just about different things, different ideas I had and stuff like that. It was pretty cool. It's a pretty cool companion when you want to brainstorm an idea. Like you just have this like esoteric idea and you're like, hey, listen, I know this is an esoteric thing. Let me just word vomit everything. And then you help me clarify what I meant by that. And it will help kind of restructure and be like, all right, cool. What about this? Let's go explore that. That's really fun. I like doing that just like in some downtime when I just want to explore different ideas and things like that. Great question though. Love that question. I just did my presentation this morning, or created my presentation this morning for Lunch and Learn tomorrow, which I'm very pumped about.
Yeah. It's been
I had James go through it this morning to make sure it was like not crazy esoteric. I was like, does this actually rationally make sense? He was like, yeah. So I'm pumped about tomorrow. It's gonna be good.
Nice. Good.
Yeah, these are just some of the things we do like culturally. It's just like every Thursday we have what we call it all hands. So we'll sit down first 30, 45 minutes. Somebody on the team will give a presentation on just whatever you want. Just teach. We're all here to learn. We want to keep learning and growing and chasing creativity. But then, after that, we'll jump into like really deep metrics on everybody, right? Just like, how's this area of the business doing? How's this doing over here? Do we need to go, fix something, blah, blah, blah. Just everybody knows kind of where everything's at and how everything's going. And then we'll do daily stand-up. So 11 a.m., everybody jumps in for about 5-10 minutes. And it's just like, what are you working on? You blocked on anything? And then everybody just gets back to it. But it kind of keeps a tight loop, right? It keeps hey, let's keep moving on this thing. It's easy to not work on something for a whole week, but every time you have to jump in every day and be like, cool, like I'm still working on that. Somebody could be like, you struggling with that? Like, do you need help? Like, can I jump in and help and blah, blah, blah. Or you just realize, you know what? I've been really putting this off. I just need to knock this thing out today. Which is me on one thing right now. I'm like really procrastinating on something. And I just got to get it done today. Got to get it done. So we're all human, unfortunately.
Yeah. It's tough for me to kind of handle my line items sometimes when I'm helping. Happy to help you folks in chat, but it takes me away from other projects sometimes. But finally been able to make some headway on a couple things this week.
Nice.
But yeah, there was one thing I saw. This is semi off topic, but building off of my Lunch and Learn, for folks who don't know, I'm a huge movie person. My first Lunch and Learn was how you go about assessing a quality movie and finding one to watch. There's a new app, I believe, if I remember correctly, it's called Movie Night. And you can enter in the streaming services that you have, and 2 people can pull it up on their phones separately. And then it's kind of like a swipe left, swipe right on what you would watch. And then when you and your partner both swipe right on a movie, then it shows you, hey, this is a movie you both would watch. And then you can just kill the scrolling time.
You just saved my marriage right there.
I was going to say it helps me and my girlfriend kind of speed things up a little bit. I think it's
I just downloaded that.
Follow up.
Yeah.
So
I just downloaded it. That's great.
Think they have like Netflix plugged into it and then a couple other streaming services, but like just makes it way easier to kind of just go through it quickly, take a few minutes, get a couple options, and then go from there.
Yeah, we have so many streaming services. I use an app called Just Watch, I think it's what it's called. But you basically say, here's what I use, and it goes, cool, here's what's live right now. And you can go through, instead of looking like platform by platform, you just go there and it'll serve. You can be like, I like this, didn't like that. I've already watched that. And so it can kind of personalize it to you. But I like this, like we're both doing it and then it finds the match. That's cool.
Yeah.
It's like dating for movies.
Exactly.
That's good stuff right there. Love that. Are you excited for Long Legs, the movie coming out on Friday?
I'm very excited. I'm actually gonna. I think I'm a little behind on movies and theaters. I might go see two tomorrow evening. With one of
Okay,
them being Long Legs. Um,
nice.
it's playing at
Inside
eight
Out or
thirty.
Inside Out too.
I did already see that. That was great.
It was
I
good. All
am.
right, nice.
Yeah, I would highly recommend that to anybody who likes animated movies or has kids.
Yeah.
But yeah, very excited for Long Legs. For those of you who don't know, Nicolas Cage will be starring as a serial killer in a thriller movie called Long Legs.
Oh, I didn't know he was even in it. I watched the trailer yesterday, but it was so mysterious. I was like, I still don't even know what it's about. But
They're
I'm so
teasing
excited.
him very hard. Like there is a
Oh
commercial
man.
for it, and the whole commercial didn't even have the audio of the scene. It was like
Uh-huh.
the first time the actress saw Nicolas Cage in character, and the
Oh,
audio of
dude.
the trailer is just her actual heart rate. And it's like wild. Supposedly
Yeah.
he goes crazy, but
It was like 100% on Rotten Tomatoes, right?
yeah, I
Which is
think it'll
like
be good.
unheard of for a horror film.
Yeah, I think it'll be good. It gives me very much, or it gives me like Silence of the Lambs vibes,
Yeah. Oh,
which will
sick.
be good. So I think I'm going to see that tomorrow, and then a new movie called Bike Riders, kind of a
Oh,
classic,
yeah, yeah.
yeah, classic based on a true story biker gang, I think in like Chicago area
Yeah.
type movie. So,
Nice.
but yeah,
Love
very
that.
excited for Long Legs. Our other co-founder James, who is right over this shoulder behind a few monitors, he's a big horror movie guy, so me and him were talking Long
Oh,
Legs
yeah.
earlier today.
Yeah, I was talking to him, I think about it yesterday. I was like, dude, you see this? He's like, no, what? I was like, dude, like, this is your jam. Like,
Yeah,
this is your Super Bowl, lock and load. Let's go, man.
yeah, I think it'll be good.
Realized James hadn't heard of The Room, the movie, and
Yeah,
Tasso and I were joking about it, and we're just like, dude, watch it tonight. It is so horribly amazing. You have to watch The Room. It's a
yeah,
cult
it's
classic right
amazing.
there.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah,
It's a little cringy at the whole time, but it's funny.
I just love how illogical that movie is. It makes no sense. It's amazing.
Yeah, I like the guy behind it. It's pretty interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Just crazy.
definitely.
Self-funded it. It was like 6 mil. Did some interesting, innovative things, but just like horrible acting and not a great plot at all.
Yeah. I mean, plot points are brought up and then never addressed later in the movie. It's hilarious.
ever.
Yeah.
And for some reason, they had to do voiceovers on the entire thing, which made no sense to me. But okay, that's great. We made him watch the trailer when we were doing a sync product sync yesterday. He's like, "What even is this?" I was like, "I cannot even explain it to you. You just have to watch it."
Yeah.
So we have a handful of minutes here. I know we're just kind of rambling here to fill the time. But again, if you have any questions, feedback, anything like that, we want to dive deep into these things. Just post it into chat here. We'll get those in our inbox, and we'll start working through each of those. I'm pretty sure we are at a new record of viewers. So appreciate everybody coming. A lot of you lurking.
Nice.
So that's okay. Still excited. Still pumped to have you here.
Nice. Love that.
We are going to be at AMZ United next month. So definitely come check us out. We're going to be sponsoring 3 or 4 of us on the team will be there. I'll be speaking at one of the conference rooms, mainly on repricing, things like that. But it's gonna be fun. It's gonna be really fun. Interesting that they chose to do it on a Tuesday, but so we'll be there Monday to Wednesday, basically afternoon. So we may or may not do office hours on Wednesday because I may be out of that week. It's the last week of August, I believe. But yeah, that's gonna be fun. That's gonna be a really fun, energetic conference to go to. From what I heard about last year, everybody I talked to, they were like, "You have to be here." I was talking with Scott Needham, who puts it on, and just pumped, man, pumped. We did Miami Seller Conference, that was amazing. We did Proven recently, that was amazing. Just a lot of energy, a lot of good positive energy, a lot of people asking good questions, a lot of people geeking out on things that you just don't really read that much about online. A lot of people will share a ton in person, but they're not really social on the internet, and so there's all this untapped kind of knowledge that exists that a lot of people just don't really have access to. So being at these events and having these kind of off the cuff conversations, you meet people that you've never heard of that are putting up massive numbers and just doing it a very different way than you've ever heard somebody run a business like this. And it's just really interesting, and everybody wants to share everything. That's what's so exciting. Everybody just wants to help and serve. And so it's just really, really an exciting experience. So if you haven't joined, definitely go. I'm gonna send out some emails to our users this week to let everybody know that we'll be there. But it's absolutely going to be worth the time. I can promise you that.
Yeah, I know we've talked a lot about like the shift in mindset for Amazon sellers between being private and now being more collaborative.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm definitely excited to get to a conference sometime in the near future. I unfortunately won't be at AMC United. I will have to move. So I'll be sweating moving furniture in the lovely late August Boston heat. But
Love it.
yeah, definitely say hello to everybody. If anyone mentions chat, let them know that I'm always happy to help.
Yeah, we'll FaceTime you.
Yeah,
I think I almost did that. No, I tried to call Finn because somebody was like, dude, Finn. I was like, hold on. I think he was on a boat because it was like a holiday. He was like, yeah, what's up, dude? That was kind of cool. So yeah, we love doing that kind of stuff. So we got about 10-ish minutes here. We might end a little early. But again, if you have questions, throw those in here. We'd love to dive deep into any questions you have related to Aura, to repricing, to selling, Prime Day, Black Friday, Q4, all those things.
Yeah, one thing James rolled out that was something I wasn't aware of is the reduced profit range should be fully implemented throughout the platform now, and additional categories of different products have more than just one reduced profit range. Was working with a user yesterday who had an item in the groceries category, I think. And it was going to be reduced profit between $15 and $16.23. So he was being priced at $14.99. We couldn't figure out why. So if you see something that may be a little off pricing wise, as always, feel free to reach out to us. We're going to dive deeper and find what may be going on there. But we're also going to potentially work on putting some sort of notification into the pricing log so that if it is at a specific price due to a reduced profit range, we're going to try to notify you folks of that just to make it a little bit more clear cut for everyone. But good news is Aura is automatically avoiding those ranges for you as of now.
Yeah, good highlight. That's the fun part, man. They Amazon does not tell us those things. There's like, do whatever you want. And we're like, cool. So we have to like reverse engineer literally everything. But luckily we have our team that's pretty great at doing that kind of stuff. So awesome. So I think we're going to wrap up a little early here. Again, appreciate everybody, a ton of people watching this. Really appreciate everybody making the time to join us here. Again, we do this every Wednesday from 2 p.m. to 3 p.m. EST, just open office hours. So we come in and we might jam on a few different things, but it's really focusing on you and the questions that you have. So as those questions are coming through, we're diving deep on each one of those. We don't care if it's a newbie question, an advanced question, repricing or related, selling related, doesn't matter. We're just here to geek out and serve and provide value where we can. So definitely come back next week. We'll definitely be here. But with that, we'll let everybody get back to the rest of their day. Casey, any last words on your end?
No last words from me. Have a great week, everybody.
Awesome. Bye, everyone.